Ahoy there, Legion! Steam sales should be in full swing by the time this goes live, so remember to pace yourself and not to get overly distracted by those flash sales. Dudes always get distracted by flashes, which almost always leads us to spending unnecessary cash, so be careful out there. I've been teasing my disagreements on what was said during Warframe's 30th dev stream, and since they fell behind this week on their patch and devstream 31 is set for Friday, no better time to get this out of the way than today. If you'd like to watch it before I highlight some issues, the link is in the description. About 16 minutes in, Lotus asked the devs a question, quote, "Do you think that your bosses should cater to every possible option of playstyle?" My, what a lovely loaded question you have, but please do go on. What is your philosophy on what the player must do in order to even face this boss? That's more like it. Now, the initial response is good. The guy says they like to keep it open, but if you have to change your style up a bit, they like that as it prevents the bosses from all feeling the same. That would have been a good place to end it, and if they ever need PR work, this guy should totally be on it, but then Lotus clarifies, you do have to change your arsenal to face your enemies, to which the first guy agrees with, exactly. Now, that somewhat contradicts what he said, or at least highlights the worst aspects of it, but this isn't even my main cause of concern. Oh no, that is what immediately follows. The lead programmer says, quote, "Having multiple ways to defeat a boss is kind of cool and interesting." And then he pauses here. It's actually quite a long pause. You can almost hear the silent, but that's not what I want to do. Having multiple ways to defeat a boss is cool and interesting, but it is also interesting that you have to tailor your loadout for a specific boss. If you know that a particular boss is immune to fire, for an example, then maybe you need to bring in other elemental mods. This is then capped with yet more backwards logic. I think the prosecutors that we implemented had their weaknesses to that degree. You've definitely explored doing that. There's a whole breadbasket of bad ideas and design going on here, but let me break down the ones that are the two main issues that I can see with it. 1. Gimmick does not equal fun in the long term. I'd go as far to say that it equals the opposite of fun in the long term. My exact quote with the reworked Vahek fight was, and I was being polite when I said, Vahek's new boss fight is okay, but the amount of times you'll need to run him to make High Droid will make this one very tedious. Tedious. Perfect word choice for such an occasion. The more hoops you require us to jump through, the better reward has to be, or else it becomes tedious. Well-crafted and unique boss fight should involve in-game strategies. Dodge this telegraphed move, jump when it makes the sound, don't alert the witch, I will not move while flame wreath is cast or the raid blows up. These are quite common tactics people will pick up, and for the most part they enhance more than they take away as the player has options to choose from. Do you stealth attack enemies for bonus and damage, or charge in and kill them? It's easier to charge in, but there's a damage multiplier if you go the more tactical approach. Stealth was recently buffed across several patches, both for rescue missions and resetting the alarms to keep enemies docile, opening up opportunities for stealth that were not accessible before. This is a good thing. But when you start adding strategies or immunities to not just make a boss fight easier, but outright required to kill the boss at all, you've gone in an incredibly wrong direction. A quick example of how quickly a good idea can turn into something far from one, allowing players to pop up bullet attractor on a boss and chase it with radial javelin is a good thing. Requiring players to do that to defeat a boss is something else entirely. Changing an optional cool move to a necessity, especially if that is the only method possible to defeat an enemy, is bad. It is a bad thing. Conclusion: never limit a player's actions just for the sake of limiting our actions. This is a major game-breaking flaw that has now repeatedly popped up, and clearly a pattern is emerging. This dev stream was all about the future mobs coming up in the game. Of all people you don't want to have bad ideas coming from are those with not only control of design decisions, but especially not from those who are in charge of coming up with those ideas in the first place. But since this is starting to become an alien concept for said people, let me reiterate with emphasis. If you are designing a fight that limits player interaction, you're going about it the wrong way. The game desperately needs a difficulty system in place. Once player ships get added, the current linear universe will be overhauled with Star Map 2.0, so perhaps then something might be able to get added, which, to clarify, is wishful thinking on my part as they haven't mentioned anything about this yet, but even so, that's still a long ways away. Right now, weapons and abilities do so much damage the best they can come up with is, it's immune, and require you to aim your barrels of death to another area you're not usually aiming at. WoW has been trying to fix a similar problem with healing in the past few expansion packs. They might not be there yet, but they are getting closer, and at least they are attempting to fix the problem at all. To summarize what I could go on about at length, if one of the reasons you designed a fight is a tie between we don't want boss fights to feel like each other, and because we haven't done it yet, you might want to let that idea float on by and pick up another. If you are making a fight gimmicky just for the sake of making it gimmicky, it is not in the player's best interests. And that should mean it is not in your best interests. Not to mention adding immunities is just the opposite of adding weak spots, and as Lotus said, you've done that several times already. So how is repeatedly making things immune not feeling the same? Doesn't that go against what you were aiming at in the first place? Number 2. Prosecutors do not have weaknesses. They have immunities. There is a world of difference between damage reduction and utter damage negation. What they should have had was weaknesses and resists. This is the same backwards logic of keeping mods extremely RNG rare and suggesting to put them up for sale in the market to fix the problem. That is ludicrous and doesn't solve the root problem while simultaneously skirting the real issue and attempting to provide you with direct profit. To even suggest prosecutors have weaknesses, what does that say about every other mob in the game that actually isn't immune to something? Does that mean in Warframe we have varying levels of immunity? That doesn't sound right, does it? Because it's just as crazy to say prosecutors have weaknesses in the first place. Just because they don't take 0 damage to something doesn't mean it's a weakness. If you use slash on ferrite armor, you might not get as far as you would with corrosive, but you will still see something other than 0. To wrap up the rest of the dev stream, they contradict themselves quite often, which also bodes poorly for the future of the game. They're adding smarter AI behavior, though they said most enemies die instantly, which they admit makes the AI look more stupid than anything. They want players to feel empowered, yet they constantly pick out random new enemies and random Warframe abilities and decide to make them immune to it just to make it unique. Seriously, I said it in a comment before and I'll say it again. Watch it as a drinking game and down a shot each time the words unique, weakness, and interesting are said. You'll wake up with a buzz next week. And they don't want to hinder single players. But they didn't really say how to make the prosecutor stop parrying all the bullets you shoot other than to get somebody else to flank them for you. And that you have to completely change your weapon, sentinel, warframe, and mod loadout just to kill that one enemy on one tile set of one faction on one planet. That doesn't seem a bit excessive to anyone else in design? No one? No one? Their other suggestion for prosecutors? Use specters. Oh, those somewhat useful, originally super expensive resource sinks that only last one mission? Huh. And all the new infested enemies seem to be dealing poison damage, so leave those useless shields you have at home and get ready to enjoy the completely immune from the front infested juggernaut who happily launches poison grenades from the back lines. And let's not forget the new J3 Golem will have a mechanic that grabs and pulls the Tenno towards it, which teammates will have to shoot to free them from, or else they get sucked in and teleported to a different part of the ship. Granted, cool idea, except what if you're fighting it solo? Anyone else ever hear of a game called Left 4 Dead? Remember how much fun it was to be the last one standing and attempting to revive a teammate, only that one smoker in the corner finds you and pulls you away, and there was nothing you could do about it? How does a solo Tenno combat that mechanic? The boss is huge and can't fit in hallways, so does it just wait for you back in his room? Does his health reset? Will you turn off that option for single players? If you do, will that missing mechanic be replaced with something else? Does that removed feature cheapen the encounter in such a way that people will purposely fight the boss solo just to avoid that mechanic and result in faster farm times? You do realize people only farm bosses entirely for drops, and making them more of a pain to run doesn't change that at all, right? As it stands currently, the game is still fun to play. I do not like to hear the direction it is going in though, as it doesn't really add up with what they are saying they are attempting to do, and I never like hearing new limitations being promoted as exciting emergent gameplay. But hey, the Kubro are coming out. Aren't they cute? Yeah, that ought to do it. There's a dev stream tonight and we got an update yesterday. Hopefully there is some good news in there. Until then, thank you for watching, Legion. I hope you have a great weekend. The missus and I should be back with another episode of Game Dev Tycoon for Monday. As always, if you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. Catch you next time, Legion. Take care.